Is there an SEC bias in the college football polling? We're going to compare SEC and Big Ten. I apologize to all of you if you're a fan of a different conference, Notre Dame, whatever it is. We're going to compare SEC. We're going to compare Big Ten. Latest poll, week 13. All right, let's start at the top. Now, my argument is more for the middle part of these conferences, but let's be fair. Let's talk about all the teams. Okay, let's start with the first two teams in the poll. Ohio State undefeated 10-0, Indiana undefeated 11-0. Both obviously Big Ten teams, 1-2. Okay, then number 3, the only undefeated team out of the SEC, Texas A&M, 10-0. So let's just start there. 1, 2, 3. Now, if you think there is an SEC bias in the polling, and there could be slightly, we'll break it down. But look at the teams I just mentioned, right? The pollsters believe that the undefeated teams, the 3 undefeated teams that we care about here, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, they feel like the Big Ten teams are better than the one undefeated SEC team in Texas A&M. And we're going to kind of go over this superficially at first. So there you go. Let's move on then to the one-loss teams. Okay, so after Texas A&M, you have the one-loss teams. So Georgia 9-1, Ole Miss 10-1. So in terms of the top tier, pollsters think that the best of the best teams, that the Big Ten teams are the best. And then if you want to drop, I don't even think it's fair to call this the second tier. I would still call these elite teams. But we're talking about one-loss teams here. So pollsters think that the SEC teams are better than the Big Ten team with one loss. So we're talking Georgia at number 4, they're 9-1. We're talking about Ole Miss at number 5, they're 10-1. Both ranked higher than Oregon. Oregon 9-1 on the season, and their only loss at home to Indiana. Indiana's obviously the number 2 team in the country, 10-point loss. But still, so again, if you're talking about any type of bias, that seems pretty fair to me with the undefeated nod going to the Big Ten teams, the one-loss nods going to the SEC teams over Oregon. We'll skip Texas Tech at, I guess it's technically tied for 6th in the AP poll. Texas Tech tied for 6th with Oregon. So go down now, we'll talk about 2-loss teams. 2-loss teams, and again, we're not going to include Notre Dame and all that. For this particular video, we're comparing the SEC and the Big Ten. Okay, so you have 2-loss teams. Highest ranked is Oklahoma at 8-2. Then you got Notre Dame, but then you have Alabama at 10, also 8-2 on the season. So when you're looking at the SEC, this is where I think the argument really gets interesting. That the depth of the SEC, the middle tiers of the SEC, I mean, look, if you're talking about Alabama and Oklahoma in a middle tier, which again, it's not fair to call it middle tier, but we're talking about 2-loss teams here. And you also have Vanderbilt in that category. So when you're looking at 2-loss teams, you have Oklahoma, you have Alabama, and you have Vanderbilt, all again ranked ahead of the 2-loss teams in the Big Ten. 2-loss teams in the Big Ten, you got to go down to USC is ranked 16th at 8-2 on the season, and Michigan is ranked 18th at 8-2 on the season. There's actually a 3-loss SEC team in Texas ranked above a 2-loss Michigan team right now. Texas is number 17. So any type of bias, which I'll be honest with you, I don't want to give away the point of this video. If there's any bias, I don't think it's anything egregious in 2025 at least. Maybe back in the day you could make that argument. I'm not even trying to do that. But I have kind of done my research. And it started with a tweet I put out last night. And I was really focusing on the 3-loss teams because this kind of stood out to me. The fact that All three-loss teams in the Big Ten are unranked. All three-loss teams in the SEC are all ranked. Now, you're kind of splitting hairs here, but here's where I think you could see a bit of bias, where it's just assumed that the wins in the SEC mean more, and the three-loss teams in the SEC, there's just the idea that those teams are just better than the Big Ten teams. So in the SEC, I mentioned you have Texas. Texas is ranked 17th in the country. They're 7-3. Tennessee is ranked 20th in the country. They're 7-3. And Mizzou is ranked 23rd in the country. They are also 7-3. And then go to the Big Ten teams I was mentioning, all 7-3, none of them ranked. So we're talking about Nebraska, we're talking about Illinois, and we're talking about Washington. Now, this is where I think the debate really gets interesting. And so far, if we want to do a quick recap, though, according to the polls, Big Ten teams are better at the top. Ohio State, Indiana over Texas A&M. That's the undefeateds. According to the polls, the SEC teams then get the nod with the one-loss teams. Georgia and Ole Miss over in Oregon. SEC again gets the nod with the two-loss teams. Oklahoma, Alabama, Vanderbilt. There you go. And so they're ranked ahead of USC and Michigan. And as I said, I'm repeating myself, but even Texas with 3 losses is ranked ahead of Michigan at 8-2. So I didn't dive into every part of all of these schedules here, but I did with the 7-3 teams. And I just find it interesting. I can't really be mad at Texas being ranked. Texas, look, their losses, they obviously lost to Ohio State, first game of the season. Ohio State #1 in the country. They just lose to Georgia, but Texas has some good wins. Texas beats, don't quote me on this, I believe it's Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. So they have some good wins. I have no problem with Texas being ranked. On the flip side, also, Nebraska at 7-3. I'm not saying Nebraska should be ranked. Nebraska doesn't have an impressive resume at all. But I think where it gets interesting is, and I'll even take Washington right now. So Washington beat Illinois, but I don't think you can make a case necessarily for Washington being ranked. I think Washington is actually pretty good. I watched them play Ohio State, and they kept it pretty close. I think it was like a 24-7 or 6-8 game, something like that. It was right around the spread. I think Washington's pretty tough. But I think the real argument here comes down to looking at Tennessee, Mizzou, and Illinois. So both Tennessee and Mizzou have what you'd call good losses, right? But they haven't beaten anybody. They haven't beaten anybody that's ranked. I think Mizzou's best win just came to versus Mississippi State. Now, Mizzou has some good close losses, obviously. I think 3 points to Alabama, 7 points to Vandy, but it could have been tied basically down to the last play where if they get in the end zone, it's a tie game. Then they had a bit of a clunker, obviously, versus Texas A&M. But also Tennessee has some of those close losses, but no real good wins, no ranked wins for either of those teams. Where if you then bring up Illinois, so here's the real battle. Illinois to me versus Tennessee and Mizzou. So Illinois, they lose to Ohio State by whatever it was, 18 or so. Can't remember the exact score, but that's around the spread. Illinois gets absolutely destroyed, though. Here's the problem. Illinois gets destroyed by Indiana. Now, Indiana's #2 team in the country. They lose 63-10, whatever it was. And then Illinois also loses to Washington, which I think Washington is a good team. And maybe obviously if Washington is ranked, if they're ranked 24th or 23rd, Illinois' schedule looks better. And hey, we have another ranked win. But Illinois did beat USC. And here's my point. It's kind of what you focus on, but Illinois by far has the best win of any of those teams I'm mentioning. Between Mizzou, Tennessee, and Illinois, Illinois has beaten USC, and USC is ranked 16th in the country. And no ranked wins for Mizzou and for Tennessee. And so Illinois, look, you lose to Ohio State, credible loss. You get absolutely boat raced, though, by Indiana. That's the one that's a real stinker. I mean, it looks terrible on your resume when you lose by 53, whatever the final score was. So I guess it's also kind of, look, there's an eye test here. I'm not even saying that Illinois necessarily would beat Mizzou on a neutral field. Would Illinois beat Tennessee on a neutral playing field? I'm not sure. I understand you should go to the eye test also, but in terms of resume, it's hard to make the case. It's hard to make the case for me that Mizzou and Tennessee should be ranked over Illinois right now at this point in the season in terms of their resumes. Because again, Illinois has the best win by far against USC, and their losses came to really good teams. To Ohio State, ranked number 1. To Indiana, but that was a blowout, so I get it. And then also Washington, which is a pretty good team. Washington receiving votes in both polls. In the coaches poll, Washington is technically the 26, 27, 28, 29th team in the country in the coaches poll. And Illinois is actually the 28th ranked team in the coaches poll. And look, Illinois is the 27th ranked team in the AP poll. So it's not like they're that far off from being ranked, but I find the argument kind of interesting. So there you go. I'm not going to go too long, but look, I think people know I'm an Ohio State fan. I grew up in Big Ten country. I like to poke fun at the SEC. We know the SEC has been great for years and years and years. Still maybe the best conference in terms of depth. The Big Ten has kind of taken over, winning national championships the last couple years. Michigan and Ohio State. Even last year, Oregon was ranked number 1 for a huge part of the season. Indiana has taken a step. But I think it's fair to say that I'm not going to complain too much. I don't think there's really that much SEC bias. I can nitpick an Illinois versus a Mizzou, but it's really not that big of a deal. Look, we'll be able to find out, hopefully. And don't tell me about bowl games. I don't care about these bowl games if they're not in the college football playoff, where we don't have guys playing because of opt-outs. The transfer portal is open. I mean, it'd be great if I could see all these 7-3 teams play each other. If you could see 7-3 Mizzou versus 7-3 Illinois. If you could see 8-2 USC versus 8-2 Vandy, or at the end of the year, 10-2, 9-3. You know what I'm talking about. Whatever they end up with, if they have 4 losses, 3 losses, 2 losses, that's where we could really see, who's better, Big Ten or SEC, if we see some of these teams match up. I do think we're going to see some of these matchups in the college football playoff, but it won't always be undefeated versus undefeated. It won't always be 1 loss versus 1 loss. It might be a 2-loss SEC team versus a 1-loss Big Ten or vice versa. So it's not exactly apples to apples. But anyway, some food for thought there. So there you go. If you're one of my St. Louis viewers, please hook up our sponsors. Triad Bank. Just had a great meeting with Triad Bank last week. Hopefully going to do some more stuff with Triad Bank. TriadBanking.com. Best thing I ever did for my rental property business. Taking all my commercial loans from a big national bank that didn't care about me to a local bank in Frontenac, Triad Bank. They also have a location in Creve Coeur. Great for commercial lending. They do retail banking. My guy, Matthew Tobin, been working with him for 5-6 years. Again, best thing I ever did for my rental property business is switching over to Triad Bank. You got St. Louis Lawn Care. You got St. Louis Equipment. St. Louis Lawn Care, cutting lawns. They do the mulch. They'll do all kinds of landscaping. Got some arborvitae, some juniper, some boxwoods for my front yard. That's St. Louis Lawn Care, stlawncare.com. You got stlmowerrepair.com, which is St. Louis Equipment. Both these companies owned by my guy, Tim Jenkerson. So stlmowerrepair.com, St. Louis Equipment, 4 locations. Just opened up a new location in Jefferson County, in DeSoto there. Look, they'll do your leaves and all that. That's also part of St. Louis Equipment. But if you're ready for the winter, for salt, they got bulk salt. If you want to get your snowplow serviced, if you mention you heard it from Charlie Marlow, they'll give you 25% off your preseason snowplow service. Get it serviced before the snow comes. Make sure it's ready to go, and you don't pull it out when there's tons of snow on the ground and go, oh, it doesn't work. Get it serviced first from STL Equipment, St. Louis Equipment, and you'll get 25% off your preseason snowplow service if you mention you heard about it from me, Charlie Marlow. So there you go. About a 15-minute video. And yeah, I'd love to say there's this huge SEC bias in the polling. Maybe slightly, but I can't be too mad about it, to be honest with you. eye test also matters. We shall see, but there you go. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.